Wahhabism and Islamophobia. Only one of these words truly exists. Definitely isn't the latter. But to Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party's limited vocabulary and soulless personalities, it does. As evidenced by the non-binding motion 103 condemning Islamophobia in the Canada House of Commons in March 2017, initiated by Liberal MP Iqra Khalid, who has ties to the following terrorist front organizations, both the NCCM, which is CAIR, C-A-I-R, Canada, well known down in the States, and Islamic Relief Canada, were identified as Muslim Brotherhood front groups in testimony to the Canadian Senate in 2015, yet openly condemning Christianity, Judaism, and other faiths and religions is A-OK with Trudeau. In fact, he stated, quote, "Evangelical Christians are the worst part of society," unquote, in an interview with a pastor and two others just a few years ago. Wow. Okay. Welcome, listeners. Always humbled to have you tune in. This show is both on my YouTube channel, So Not PC Podcast with Rob Adamus, and website, www.sonotpcpodcast.com. If it's your first time here, thank you so much, and hopefully the topic today will be informative, enlightening, makes you think, makes you question, makes you go out and, here comes the show's mantra, do your own research. Then share the information with others who are not fully awakened or have an ill-informed opinion based simply on not having had the facts previously. The reason I ask you to do this is for one reason only. As much as what I'm saying is researched, verified, and then disseminated to you, don't just sit on the information. These topics are meant to be talked about with others, whether the person or persons you're sharing with care to hear truth or not. And if you become a regular listener, thank you to all of you, of course, because the show exists only for you, and I pray it continues to grow for many years. To start off, we need to define Islam and its non-existent red-headed stepchild, Islamophobia, along with the extremism within Islam called Wahhabism, to give people an overview of where Islam originates from, why certain elements within it is an ideology and not a religion, and how Islamophobia is being peddled in Canada as an actual thing by a Liberal government that doesn't give a damn about Canadian citizens and our interests, needs, and sovereignty, which must be first in all decisions as a good and elected government should, considering these employees work for us. Did you hear that, Canadian citizens? They work for us. Seems people forget that any governing party is a conglomeration of just a handful of people. And in the case of the Liberal Party, there are only 184 libtard MPs in Ottawa. Explain to me how 184 people who work for you have full control over 37 million Canadians. Think on this. If you sit back and do nothing, you're done. Is this what you want? To roll over and die? If you allow the Liberal Party to bring extremists into your country and you don't fight an evil foe you can easily beat, then you deserve to be slaves. I'm sick and tired of hearing the term laid-back Canadians. You know what that means to me? Lazy. Don't give a damn sheeple. Thank God I and many other Patriots don't fit into this category, but I'm putting this out to you right now. Get off your butts, not Gerald butt. Well, you can get off of Gerald butt, I suppose, too, and take your country back. You have the power, not only in numbers, but intellect and resources. As soon as you finish listening to this podcast, go out and take some action like calling your area MP. Join a group or groups of others of the same mind and soul. In other words, I'm stating the Liberal Party is just like the Democrat Party in the U.S. in that they're both left-wing parties, hell-bent on bringing North America to its knees by implementing a socialist, fascist, meaning communist, control the citizens, one-world government scenario, and using Islamist extremists as their military to eliminate us and our rights and freedoms. No way. I will fight to my dying breath to protect my home country and the world from this satanic evil. And you better man or woman up and do the same. All right, Wahhabism. And for all my listeners, I'm not here to condemn Muslims and any followers of Islam, okay? But there are evil elements within Islam that must be discussed, clarified, and fought against, or the next step in end times prophecy will be well on its way. This cannot happen, and citizens of all countries need to understand this. I've said a number of times before, people have an incredible collective power when we band together for the right reasons, and good must combat against the likes of ISIS, Islamist extremists, Antifa, Boko Haram, Hezbollah, and similar groups who represent evil. I was speaking with a Muslim gentleman the other day who stated those who follow Islam are 90% Muslim and the other 10% represent Wahhabis, the extreme sect of Islam. Given whatever study you may find, I'm sure these numbers can be quite skewed to its true percentages. However, for the sake of this, gentlemen, we'll go with what he said. All right? So, Islamic radicalism, its Wahhabi roots and current representation. Radicalism in various forms has made significant inroads in several countries of Central Asia and in the Caucasus in particular. 3 countries that share the Fergana Valley, namely Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan, Chechnya, and the Russian Republic of Dagestan. Known as fundamentalism or Wahhabism, it poses a direct challenge to the ideal vision of a state that the newly founded nations of the region have embraced. In addition, the broader ideology named Wahhabism represents a serious challenge to the theology and practice of the mainstream Sunni Islam, to which most of these nations' populations adhere. Should this radicalized understanding of Islam continue to spread unchecked, radical interpretations could threaten social stability at the local, national, and regional levels and create serious geopolitical dangers to which neighboring powers, as well as the U.S., Canada, and Europe, would have to react. Today, throughout the world, there has been a wave of radical movements, which sometimes turn militant, whose source can be traced to the Wahhabi movement. What is this movement, and how did it spread throughout the Muslim world, and now the Western world? What are its ideological differences with traditional Islam, and how are these differences influencing and supporting modern-day radical movements? And what can be done to diminish the power of these movements in vulnerable states? Traditional Islam views religion as a pact between man and God, and therefore the domain of spirituality. In this belief, there can be no compulsion or force used in religion. From the time of the Prophet Muhammad, and many theological scholars state a solid evidential case for Muhammad having been a false prophet, peace and tolerance were practiced between different religious groups with respect to distinctions in belief. Contrary to this, the Wahhabi ideology is built on the concept of political enforcement of religious beliefs, thus permitting no differences in faith whatsoever. In Wahhabi belief, faith is not necessarily an option. It's sometimes mandated by force. And let me say, no faith comes from force. All right. The origins of almost all 20th century Islamic extremist movements lie in a new Islamic theology and ideology, developed in the 18th and 19th centuries in tribal areas of the Eastern Arabian Peninsula. The source of this new stream of thought was a Muslim scholar named Muhammad ibn Abd al-Wahhab, hence the name Wahhabism. The premise of this new narrow ideology was to reject traditional scholarship and practices under the guise of reviving the true tenets of Islam and protecting the concept of monotheism, which means the doctrine or belief in only one God. Ibn Abd al-Wahhab's brand of, quote, purification of Islam consisted of prohibiting many traditionally accepted acts of worship, reverence of the person Muhammad, peace be on him and the pious saints, and burning books containing traditional prayers, interpretations of law, and commentaries on the Quran and Hadith. He encouraged his followers to interpret the holy books for themselves and to act on their interpretations in light of their own understanding, regardless of their understanding of fundamental principles or lack thereof. Anyone who did not profess to this new ideology was considered outside of the realm of Islam, an apostate, disbeliever, or idolater, thus making the shedding of their blood and confiscation of their wealth permitted. Not nice. In this way, he was able to secure a significant following whose legacy continues in one form or another until today. Over time, Ibn Wahhab's ideas spread far and wide, being debated, called into question, and sometimes supported. Struggle ensued between the staunchly orthodox Ottoman Empire and the Wahhabi tribes. Gradually, from 1920 until today, they were very successful in establishing an accepted new ideology in Islam, whose essential characteristic is extreme views and interpretation, as contrasted with traditional Sunni Islam. Coming under the guise of reform of the religion, the movement gathered momentum in the last 3 decades with support from a number of wealthy individuals, and I think we can kind of track who that might come from. I'll implant Saudi Arabia in there. As it has grown, the movement mutated and splintered with the eventual outcome that some groups went to the extreme in radicalization of their beliefs. Now, there's a lot of wordage here. Okay, and I will go on and on and on about this, but the fact is, Wahhabism really is a sickness. Okay? Now, Wahhabi belief provides the religious and ideological underpinnings to enable militant movements to take up arms. We're talking about someone like ISIS here, against existing governments if they deem the need arises. Though these movements are ideological in nature, they easily resort to armed struggle. While most governments are able to reconcile and reach compromises, as one may easily compromise with a moderate Muslim, extremists reject any kind of compromise, insisting on their way and no other. See this on TV? Maybe. Internet? Maybe. They have tunnel vision, believing in a duty and message to deliver. You've seen or heard this gruesome message by their beheadings, stoning to death of women, and throwing gay people off buildings. The extremists who have turned militant declare war against anyone with viewpoints contrary to theirs. Thus, declaration of war against the government is commonplace. In Egypt, they oppose their government. Similarly, in Jordan, they oppose their government. In Syria, Pakistan, Algeria, and many other countries, Wahhabi-minded groups oppose their governments as they have begun to do in the Caucasus and Central Asia. The approach of these movements is to infiltrate mosques, Islamic teaching centers, and charitable organizations from where they indoctrinate religiously oriented people with their ideas and methods. They forcefully impose their views on weak societies in hopes of conquering one and establishing a base for further control. They justify their militant acts and illegal means of financing their cause by claiming to wage a jihad. I'm sure you may have heard that word before. For the preservation of Islam. Today we have many examples of this phenomenon, whether it's individuals declaring war on America or vigilante groups coming against their governments in Central Asia. This contradicts the explicit teaching of Muhammad, not to oppose a ruler as long as he does not prevent the performance of prayer, even if he commits injustice. Thus, those of the Wahhabi mentality use Islam when it suits them and likewise contravene it at their convenience. The word Islamic is grossly abused by extremists who attribute to the religion all kinds of rulings, which, in fact, contradict the essence of the religion and spirit. Among them is the fatwa that justifies the use of terror tactics, such as suicide bombings of civilians and attacks against non-combatants in marketplaces, schools, offices, and places of worship. I know that we've all seen this happen, and it's sick. The problem of extremism exists not only in far distant countries, but in North America as well. It can be dealt with more effectively if the West better understands Islam and builds bridges with moderate Muslim individuals and nations. To support religious freedom abroad without having knowledge of whom is supporting, example, an extremist movement, is an irrational misuse of the laws protecting the religious rights of individuals. Saudi Arabia, as I mentioned, is front and center in extremist funding. Now I want to summarize this podcast in this way. Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party are co-conspirators in bringing ISIS terrorists and other extremists into Canada under the guise of reintegration and illegal immigrants. There is no such thing as reintegrating these radicalized individuals, just like Islamophobia is not a thing. They have one goal: death through domination. If Canadians do not fight for our sovereignty, our rights and freedoms, our very existence against this evil, Canada will become a third world, Sharia law, extremist hellhole, where only a few, meaning the globalists, their puppet politicians and corporations, benefit financially and through citizen enslavement control. It's not a joke. Other countries in the Middle East, some European, are already there. Again, I ask the question, is this what you want? Will you do nothing and just let this happen? Better not. We are the majority. We are the heart and soul people of this world. So do your part. So, until next episode, be safe, be learned, grow your faith, do your own research, ask questions, question mainstream media's lies and propaganda. And may God bless you and your loved ones in all ways. Please share my YouTube channel, So Not PC Podcast with Rob Adamus, and website, www.sonotpcpodcast.com with others. God bless, and good night.